Welcome to the Magdalene Voices, giving voice to those silenced for centuries through sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls. I'm your host, spiritual business mentor, catalyst, and facilitator, Maria Estela. I serve soul-driven, heart-based entrepreneurs, Magdalene's Rising, and radiant beings just like you with the expansion and growth of yourself and thus your business, bringing to life that which you are here to birth, expressing your soul's divine purpose through the work that you do in this world. If you haven't already, I highly encourage you to join my sacred circle to stay connected and updated. You can do so on my website, mariaestela.com, where you can also find out more about me and my work, as well as the show notes for today's episode. And if you have ever wondered about your Magdalene connection and calling, and whether you are a Magdalene or not, I invite you to download the Magdalene Blueprint I have created for you. Go to mariaestela.com/AYM to get it. For today's episode, I am joined by Keone Hanalei. Keone is a Hawaiian alchemist, botanist, and cultural practitioner born and raised on the island of Maui. Upon birth, he was adopted by his grandmother, who was a well-known and recognized kahuna, or Hawaiian spiritual healer. Keone became entrusted with ancient Hawaiian and Mu secrets from his grandmother, who had a premonition that he would disclose those secrets to the world when the time was Hemolele, that is, perfect. Born under a full moon in Scorpio, this sun sign Aquarian has always leaned towards understanding the nature of things and the inner order of the human condition. As an alchemist and botanist, he owns and operates Pohala, a line of nourishing and enriching esoteric medicines, oils, teas, and other products made from native Hawaiian botanicals. His specialty is focused on endemic and indigenous Hawaiian ferns, which, as told by the ancient Hawaiian people, carry the pure codes to human emotions, which he has termed the principles of aloha. In today's sacred conversation, you will hear Keone share his deep and extensive wisdom and knowledge on Fern Medicine and how it can serve you in your awakening and healing.
Keone, I think we're both equally excited to be on this call or conversation or whatever we're going to call this. First of all, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to be here. I think it's about a month and a half ago, I started having some very weird experiences with ferns, or rather I was being led to ferns. And I live in Denmark, where ferns are not, I wouldn't say they're not, I don't know if they're natural, but it's not like fern forest. It's not like, to me, ferns were like an 80s plant growing up, and it's not something I've ever really considered. And I love succulents, but I never really, I wouldn't have considered myself a fern person. But it started showing up to me in all of these different places. I was, reading a book, and the main character her name was Fern, and I was shuffling my word feud game, and Fern showed up, and I was very clearly being told, go buy ferns. And I do what I'm being told. So I went and bought some ferns and was told it wasn't enough. So I had to go back and buy more ferns. And so that's why I'm sitting here surrounded by ferns.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on with ferns? And then through I don't believe in coincidences, but I was led to your Instagram account, Pohala Medicinals, and I will link to that. And after following you for just a very brief and short time, I wanted to know more, and I wanted to have you on the Magdalene Voices. So thank you for being here. And my first question to you is, what's going on with ferns? Like, what are ferns? What is Fern Medicine? Please share. The floor is yours. Please share everything. Tell me.
first, I wanted to say mahalo nui loa. Thank you so much for having me and for initiating this dialogue. And I respect you as a medicine holder yourself, and getting to know exactly the messages that you're expressing through your website, through your Instagram, has really inspired me. So I am just so honored to share the space with you. So mahalo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, ferns, right?
Yes, yes.
So I'm just gonna start off by giving a background of the biology.
Yes.
Ferns, and then we'll segue into the esoteric and
Mm.
how that has nourished me and how that plays a part in the Hawaiian traditions.
Yes.
So ferns are species which have achieved what is called evolutionary stasis.
Mm-hmm.
They're one of the oldest species on the planet. And what's really magnificent is when you look at ferns, for instance, I have this kupu kupu fern right here. When you look at ferns, it's very similar, sister, to the ones you have back.
Yeah.
They're so fragile. They seem so fragile, their biological body, but yet they've withstood just eons of the shifts that our planet has gone through.
Yeah.
So they've achieved what is called evolutionary stasis.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only species on this planet to have achieved this. This is very profound. And what evolutionary stasis is, it means that a species has reached their evolutionary ceiling.
Mm.
They need not evolve anymore.
Oh.
They are complete.
Yeah.
Only species on the planet. Wow, that's huge. And the oldest fossils we have from ferns date back 180 million years. When they test those fossils, they are identical to the fern that I'm holding in my hand right now. They have not changed. So they live up to that evolutionary stasis. Mm-hmm. And when you think of all the shifts the planet has gone through, fire, ice, the shifting of the continents, impacts, but yet they have not changed. And when we look at crystals and stones, some of the compounds on Earth that seem to be the most solid, no pun intended, but the most secured in their physical avatar, they themselves have gone through magmatic changes, but the ferns have not. So their intelligence is inconceivable. Yes. With lack of a better word, especially for human beings, we're in a heightened evolutionary moment.
Yes.
So it's very difficult for us to even conceive of a species to have achieved what is known as evolutionary stasis. So part of the esoteric component of Fern medicine is that eons ago, when the beings who lived on the planet, who made this planet their home, became aware that a shift was about to occur, and it was more so of a spiritual shift. And this spiritual shift would be considered a spiritual dark age, which is what we're climbing out of right now.
Yes.
Because their vessel is complete and pure and cannot be corrupt. It cannot be corrupt because of what it has achieved, evolutionary stasis. It does not need to accumulate. No. Because it does not need to accumulate, it cannot be affected by any infiltrations.
Yes.
So these spiritual beings decided to code human emotions, which define our human experience, is truly our emotions. They decided to code individual human emotions in individual fern spores, or I like to call them pollen. That's how it was taught to me by my grandmother. Yeah. It's coded in the pollen. So within the pollen hold the codes of the purity, the essence of human emotions. Yes. So with that being said, Fern medicine is all about emotional intelligence. Oh. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, when we talk about human beings interacting with our emotions right now, we're at two polar opposites because we are experiencing a world of duality right now.
Yes.
And when we look at emotions, we go to complete total ends of the spectrum. Either we meet emotions with fear or aversion. There are ferns who hold the codes to such emotions as grief, emotions such as ruin, and those are met with aversion, fear. So to many, they will not even interact with them because there's been this conditioning of what they represent, which of course is false. And I'll tell you right now that the fern for grief, kama maku'ilauli, grief is really about reflection and memory. And when we can look at grief in that sense, then it softens our conditioning. We're able to open up and really collaborate with that. But because the conditioning has told us grief is something that is quite painful and it leads to suffering, there's a total aversion to it.
Oh, yes.
And on the other side of the spectrum, we meet emotions with either craving or lack. So, for instance, there's a fern for euphoria, and there's a fern for glee. And usually those are met with a need for more. I need more, excess, and then we exploit it. Because we're at those two polar opposites, we never meet them in their now. That's very significant. Is that we're able to interact with our emotions in the now. And because of those two polar regions, when we meet the emotions, we're never meeting them in our now. It's either craving or we feel we lack it, we need more, or that we are in aversion, we are afraid of it, we don't even want to interact with it. And my grandmother, her name is Keone, and she was what Hawaiians would call a kahuna, or a spiritual medicine teacher. She was the one who taught me about Fern medicine. And of course that came from her mother, her mother-in-law, and down, and since this epic revolution began. And for as long as I can remember, and as long as she can remember, this has been considered what we Hawaiians call huna, or secret. It was not allowed to be disclosed. The reason being is because humanity was not ready. The time had to be Hemolele, or perfect. And I tell you what, many people are calling this the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Many are calling this the feminine shift. Well, guess what? It is now. It is happening because Fern medicine came out crying for recognition, saying the time of disclosure is now. The kapu has been lifted. No more huna. And that's why I'm with you today, sister. Is to talk about Fern medicine, emotional intelligence, human beings coming into their power by really, really understanding, expressing, collaborating our true emotions. Once again, not meeting them with aversion or fear or a sense of craving or lack, but allowing them to really just sit in our now and express themselves through our essence, which is what it is meant to happen. So that's a rundown of Fern medicine, sister.
First of all, I love how you call them, or how you name them, a species, because it's very clear to me. And this is not something, I grew up in a city, surrounded by concrete and asphalt. Yes, we have parks and so forth. Now I live outside of the city and I live, close to the nature, and it speaks, the plants, I can't explain, like my ferns, they smile, and I've never had that, and I understand that it's a journey of course, of unveiling and becoming ready and so forth. So I love how you call them a species, recognizing that they are as we are, like we are a species too, like we are all species, you know, we're
Yes,
all,
they are sentient beings. They are
yes,
sentient beings as we are.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they speak and they have their own wisdom and not beautiful. And I want to, you know, because when I reached out to you, one of the things I said was, I understand if this is sacred or secret, and I don't want you to share things, because I understand that there is a, and there has been, and there is, you know, there are things that are, you know, you go through these, we live in a day and age where we just want everything all at once, but we can't handle it all at once. We have to go through these, I don't know if it's initiations or like stages of preparing myself. Like today I'm talking about things that I couldn't have spoken about or held space for 10 years ago, because I wasn't ready for it. Um, so thank you for sharing that.
You know, and if I can just add something with what you're just saying, thank you for bringing that up, because, you know, being indoctrinated to something, especially that is so revolutionary and just really, really changes the dynamic of how we interact with our reality. As of now, at this moment, there are 103 emotions that are willing to be disclosed. So within the pantheon of Fern Medicine, and I call these the principles of aloha.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason being is because, and this is the most common question I have, sister, when it comes to emotions and then individual specific ferns.
Yeah.
Many people ask me, "Oh, what is the fern of love? What is the fern of love?" And great question.
So tell me, what is the fern of love?
Perfect question. However, love or aloha is the accumulation and the culmination of all the emotions.
Yes.
So there's not one individual fern who holds the codes to love. We can only experience love in its totality when we have mastered all of the emotions. Then we are allowed to really dive into the field of true love. And that is like, for me, it's so profound, because many people and many religions also state that the human experience is, with lack of a better word, the hunt for love. And ferns say that, you know, mastering our emotions, and then we are gifted the true experience of love. So as of now, the indoctrination process, there are 103. And my tutu, my grandmother, we call grandmother tutu in Hawaiian culture, but my tutu told me, she said that as we evolve and as we reach certain tiers of emotional maturity, more will reveal themselves. And the exciting thing about this is that many of these that will reveal themselves are emotions that we had no idea even existed, that we can't even conceive of right now. So, you know, when we talk about the raising of the vibration, the human vibration, and all these new codes, all these new experiences coming in, it's in line with Fern Medicine. We have many emotions yet to experience, and it will be divine.
What I love about, you know, because it's all about, you know, one of the things that I'm all about is about, you know, there's no way out. There's no way, you know, you can't go around. There's no shortcuts. And what I hear and what you're saying is that the only way is through, and it's through those emotions, like sitting with those emotions. That's what I mean by through is by, you can't get around them. You have to feel them to heal them. You have to sit with them to heal them.
Absolutely. You know, and there's a botanical for pain, for divine pain. Pain is all about foundation and sensation. So when I became indoctrinated with ohialehua, with divine pain, which is a feminine aspect, by the way, anytime I would feel physical pain or spiritual, mental pain, I would, as you just said, sister, I would sit with it and I would say, I'm integrating it. I'm integrating so I could feel it in its now. It could be resolved, fulfilled, completed, and we move on.
Yes.
And that, to me, when we move on, when we're able to integrate emotions, meet them in their now, and it's like, you know, that spiral The spiral, the outer bands are so large, right? They're humongous. Most human beings are stuck in that largest outer band. They're looping. It's insanity. It's so many of us, okay? When we are able to integrate emotions and meet them in their now, then we graduate to that smaller spiral. And then more integration, more understanding, collaboration with our emotions. We go to the smaller one. And you know how a spiral works? The smaller it gets, the faster the vibration, until you get to the nucleus of the spiral, which many call source, God. And then it's complete. We go into aloha, we go into love. And that is the easiest way for me to explain to many people about the insanity of the conditioning of the human experience right now, is that we are stuck in that largest outer band, which is slow, which is continuous and pathological. And then once we integrate, oh my gosh, and then, you know, the second band, and then it becomes second nature, and then we just speed up, you know? So we're all just graduating from that first band.
I have tears in my eyes of you know, of gratitude and feeling blessed, and like, it's like, it, yeah. The wisdom you're sharing is just, deep, very, very, very deep. You mentioned, you mentioned the feminine, and I wonder about the feminine and the masculine. I don't know, you know, for me, I talk about divine feminine, divine masculine, and their shadow aspects. But I wonder, since you mentioned feminine, can you speak about the feminine or the masculine principles of ferns? Is that the right question to ask?
Yes, absolutely. So individual emotions, or coded ferns, are ruled energetically by a masculine or feminine. Okay, so like, for instance, this fern right here, this is called Lawa'e fern, and just look at the spores, the pollen.
Oh wow.
So that's the code, sister. Those are codes.
Really?
If you were to go with a microscope, a powerful microscope, it would be a formula, a mathematical equation in there. And that's the roadmap to this emotion. And this represents divine beauty. Beauty is all about expansion, expression, creativity, art, music. And what is interesting about Lawa'e fern beauty is that it's a masculine fern. And a lot of people would relate beauty to feminine, but it's a masculine. And the way it works, from my understanding and what I was taught, is that, you know, the feminine rules intuition, the comprehension of symbols, and emotionality, whereas the masculine represents logic, practicality, reason. When we talk about Fern medicine, we talk about emotional intelligence. It's very feminine. It's a very, very feminine resonance. And it makes sense, sister. We're in a feminine shift, are we not? So the fact that this is being disclosed now during a feminine shift, everything is sophisticated. And we're seeing that right before our eyes. What the masculine does is that really the masculine is the engine for emotions to be expressed.
Yes.
And that merging of the masculine and the feminine is so important, so that all this great feminine wisdom of emotions and us coming into our power because we recognize and express our emotions, we access the masculine so that it can be the generator to help us proliferate that. And the masculine and the feminine, I talked about 103 ferns, right? Or principles, emotions. So there are 101 masculine, 101 feminine, and there is one fern that is totally androgynous, meaning that it is fluent in mathematics or logic and intuition or emotions. That is Palapalai fern, and Palapalai fern is the scribe to discipline. So, yeah.
But you said you mean 203 or 103?
103.
Yes, and there is.
Oh, I'm sorry. So 50. There's 51.
51.
Sorry, 51 masculine, 51 feminine, and 1 androgynous.
My logic is going 101 and 101 is 202.
I was never good at math.
No, me neither. Okay, yeah. So there's 51 and 51. I'm like, you can't make this shit up. It's like, how do you like? How does that like that? You can't make like how yeah. Of course, there's going to be a equal, and then what? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And were you done, or can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What was it? What was the question? It was the feminine and then the masculine. So there's equal. Yes. So one of the things, and I think we maybe we texted about this before we went on, but so for me, one of the important things is I recognize the divine feminine rising, and it's very clear that the world is going through this shift. What I also recognize is that it's very important for us to, at the same time, as we heal our divine feminine essence and allow her to rise, for me, there's also the importance of the divine masculine, both within, and when I say divine masculine, I don't mean men and women. It's the essence that we all carry, and we all carry both of them. And so for me, it's been a journey, because I think that for me, I recognize now in my life that I'm probably have been more in my masculine than I have been in my feminine. So for me, but I have been in my shadow masculine most of my life. And so allowing the divine feminine to rise, I then did not want to have anything to do with anything that resembled masculine, which took away everything that you spoke about in terms of proliferation, in terms of delivery, in terms of expression. It took away that, because I was just focused on the wisdom, the knowledge that I received, the sitting in meditation, being in prayer, doing my internal practices, and not honoring the masculine. Where am I going with this? Do you have any what comes up for you? I'm like, why am I talking about this? But there's a reason for it. It's about also honoring the divine, allowing the masculine to be healed as well, because I feel that's we don't have any examples of the divine masculine, because we've been conditioned in the patriarchy and shadow masculine. Yeah. Right.
And that, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for saying that. And what the ferns have told me about this shift, the feminine shift, and really harnessing and still honoring the divine masculine. And they said that if you shift into another epic of imbalance, meaning if we go into the feminine shift and now we dishonor the masculine, because look what we've done with the feminine.
Yes.
We've suppressed the feminine.
Yes.
So if we go into a feminine shift, and we create a hierarchy, and then the masculine becomes shamed.
Yes.
The ferns say, you cannot weather another imbalance. This is it.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you said that, because this is one of my messages when I talk about emotional intelligence and Fern medicine, is that the reverence and the honor to the divine masculine must be upheld. And it's to create that divine balance.
Yes.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. And again, and also that's actually where it becomes and I'm with you on that, like 100%. That it's my message too, and so that it's like we must honor the divine masculine or heal. And again, it's not about, because then it turns into then again, that can turn into men becoming scapegoats, and men and of course, like, it's not about not, if people have done bad things, whether they be men or women, they have to, there's justice and there's truth and everything. So it's not about that, but it's about making sure that, because in my line of work, what I see are a lot of mostly women, but men too, who do become so aligned with their divine feminine that they actually veer into the shadow aspects, which I see as complacency or being lazy, and then they become bitter and jealous and compare, and they just, and that's simply because they're suppressing the expression of their divine feminine, and for me that is done with the support of the divine masculine. So those two things must how did you, I know you're coming to me live from Hawaii,
yes,
which is amazing.
Beautiful Maui.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how did you, because I know, as far as I can tell, you have a bit of a story in terms of you didn't, it wasn't like, I know your tutu taught you from an early age, but it wasn't until later that you realized that she had taught you. How did you, would you share a little bit about your journey and how you came to where you're at now?
Sure, I would love to. I just want to say one more thing about the masculine feminine, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
And then I'll definitely talk about tutu and how I was raised. So one of the greatest things that we can really acknowledge and recognize in regards to the feminine and the masculine is to no longer assign these energies to the physical body. So when we think about masculine, we think about a male, a biological male with biological male parts and aggression. And we are now in a field of influence where we can spiritually and energetically acknowledge emotions without the physical avatar. That's one of the problems with, or one of the situations with the experience now, is that we are so locked in matter. We are so obsessed with the physical and the physical world. The gravity has pulled us into this ground. And when we can detach ourselves from seeing the masculine and the feminine from the aspects of the physical body, it will really open up the opportunity for us to evolve. And I love this saying: if you need to identify your spirit with the body part, choose the heart. Choose the heart.
Yes.
And that is truly the stage that we're in right now with the human experience, is we are moving less into this obsession with the physical.
Yes.
More into our divine spirituality. And that's how we, I recommend we focus on the feminine and the masculine. Less the body, more to the spirit. If you must, with the body, the heart, the balance, it's right, it centers us.
Yes. And what's so interesting about the heart is because there are all these sayings about the heart, like, and I think that most people recognize that we have a spiritual heart, even though we have a physical heart. But if you look at everything that's put, quote unquote, into all of the meaning that the heart is given, it's like, it's really just like a muscle that's pumping blood. So there is a spiritual heart, and for me, when you say heart, it's like it takes me straight to the spiritual heart. But
oh my gosh, you're already a step ahead of the game, sister.
I'm so sorry. I'm coming back. I'll feel my heart, but it's like, ooh, heart, and yes, because
thank you for sharing that. Totally, it's inspirational. Yes, the heart is also a spiritual aspect. Yes.
Yes.
So to my tutu, how I was raised in Hawaiian culture, it's very customary for someone to hanai you, someone in the family or a close family friend to hanai. Hanai means to adopt.
Yeah.
I was my grandmother's last grandchild. And so I was her last opportunity to hanai, because she had not hanaied anyone. She had 15 grandkids. So she hanaied me. My grandmother is very traditional. She spoke fluent Hawaiian. She did many cultural, very steeped in Hawaiian culture, in Hawaiian tradition.
Yeah.
And so upon birth, and this is kind of interesting when you talk about what you resonate with masculine or feminine. So one of my tutu's talents is, and she did this by the time my mother was hapai or pregnant with me. She had been doing this for 50 years, but she would feel a woman's pregnant belly, and then she would determine the sex, and then she would also determine aspects of them.
Oh.
She never got it wrong, sister, until my mother was hapai with me.
Oh.
She felt my mother's belly. She said, "Girl."
Oh.
And she said, "But this girl will be very masculine and intense." And so it's kind of interesting now, as being a carrier for Fern Medicine, I believe it was destined so that the circles of women would receive me, and the circles of men would still be comfortable with disclosing their emotions with me. And that really has been my experience, is that I've been very accepted by my men and by women on a very spiritual level. And so that made perfect sense when Tutu did that. And when I came out, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, Tutu's wrong."
What's that between his legs? Like, oh no.
Right.
Get him back.
This is a mistake. Put him back. Bring him back out.
Give him another chance. Wow.
But so when she hanai'd me and I lived with her, she only spoke Hawaiian to me. I didn't learn English fluently until I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And my life from 1 till 5, that's the duration of when I lived with her, would be very peculiar to the Western world. It was steeped in ceremony. It was steeped in mysticism. And every day was a ceremony. My grandmother had a beautiful saying. She said, "Everything you do must be a ceremony. Only then will your entire life be an act of worship." And so that's how all our day unfolded. Everything was a ceremony. You know, watering the plants, creating food, picking a mango from the tree had an element of ceremony. And that opened up the gates to reverence, especially with nature.
That was the word that was going through my mind. It was like, there's a reverence in this. It's like,
yeah. And this fern, kupu kupu, is divine reverence.
Oh.
It holds the codes to reverence. Yeah. And so what was very interesting though, sister, is when I was 5, there was a concern by my parents that I didn't speak English very well. And in Hawaii, although Hawaiian is considered an official language, there's only 40,000 native speakers. So English is pretty much the language of the collective here. So there was a concern that I didn't know how to speak English very well. There's also concern because my parents and a lot of the other family members were very Western.
Oh.
And so there was a concern that I was turning to be quite peculiar.
Well, aren't we all?
Right. And so they decided to take me back. And they moved me to Kauai. And I started to learn English and in school, and I started to learn the Western model of what is a nourishing life, which, you know, when I think back of how I live with Tutu and everything being a ceremony, that's the nourishing life. But because I wanted so badly to fit in and to play the game, I began to reject the ceremony. I began to reject everything Tutu had taught me. And I began to imitate the little kids in my community. I began to imitate what I saw on TV, what I read on the magazines. I wanted to be accepted. And that's what most human beings are going through, is that we so want to be validated by our community that we are willing to bypass our integrity in order to achieve that.
Yes.
Sister, that's exactly what I did. You know, when we talk about our planet and our species going through a spiritual dark age, I went through a personal spiritual dark age. When I signed that contract and said, I relinquish ceremony and Fern Medicine, and I will do everything the magazine and the TV tells me to do. And that's what I did. And
you were really happy for a very long time, right?
Right, I know, right? Like, oh my gosh. Well, I was very exhausted for a very long
Yes. I can imagine.
time. So I began to have an aversion for even Tutu herself. Every time I would go back and she'd want to do ceremony, it frightened me because I had created a new persona. I had created a role. I had created a lie, and I needed to uphold that lie. And I needed that lie to just become me because I so love the validation from this culture of control, I call it. This culture of control. The things of validation somehow fulfilled me because I was playing the game. And I began to refuse Fern Medicine. Every day I remember Tutu and I, between 1 and 5, going to different places on our island on Maui and having dialogue with ferns, and she would go through ceremony and she would go through trance. And she'd come out of trance and then she'd tell me about what the fern was saying in the dialogue, but she'd always tell me, do not tell anyone. It is not Hemolele. It is not perfect. The time is not perfect. This is una. This is secret. This is kaku. This is forbidden. And what's interesting is I never had another discussion with Tutu about ceremony and Fern Medicine before she finally hala. She died when I was 18. So about a year ago, when it was maybe more than a year ago, sisters, you know, I did everything that an American should do. I went to college. I got a bank account and I counted my money every day and made sure that I was going to have more money and I was going to buy a nice car and I was going to look good and I needed admiration, accolade, and so exhausting, right? And I never had the discussion with Tutu about, hey, when is the time Hemolele? When is the time perfect? Because I didn't care, sister. I was so immersed in the culture of control. I did not even care. About over a year ago, I was working as a front desk manager of a hotel. And it just dawned on me. I said, wow, this can't be it. This can't be it. I'm exhausted. I don't want to play this game anymore. And so subconsciously, and I had suppressed Tutu and ceremony so much that it was like, that wasn't the first thing that I thought of to access, to help me transition. But I just started to walk into nature and do nature walks. And then the ferns started to call me and they said, remember, hey boy, remember. Eho'imai, come back, Eho'imai. And slowly I began to just have very, very minimal dialogue because I was still in that in-between of ceremony and the culture of control. But every time I would make contact, it felt so nourishing. And it was almost immediate after I had invited them back in that they said, it's Hemolele. It's Hemolele. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, oh my gosh, what now?
Give me some time, please. I'm not ready yet.
I have to do this now. What? So really within the last year, things have just really exploded with me creating medicinals, oils, teas, tinctures, to help get the word out about Fern medicine and emotional intelligence. And really that has been a catalyst for me to have discussions with people like you, to be invited into circles, to be invited into workshops, and to start talking about this very relevant, revolutionary issue about coming into emotional maturity. So that, you know, there's something called neurogenesis. And we are ripe for neurogenesis. The first neurogenesis happens when we're born. That trauma of being born really codes us. Okay. that's the first neurogenesis. Now with emotional intelligence, we're going through another field of neurogenesis where now we can change the neurons in our brain so that we can open up to inviting emotional intelligence and really experience our emotions once again. But sister, did I answer your question?
Yes,
That was like a lot. I don't know.
Yes. I went through every emotion. I was like, my heart was breaking, but I also understood that in order to be where you're at, doing what you're doing, you have to go through that journey. You have to have, quote unquote, both worlds. You have to have the Hawaiian traditional upbringing, and then you have to be in because if you didn't speak English, I wouldn't be able to talk to you. We could sit here and we can just look at each other and you could speak, but I would probably get it on a vibrational level, but we have to get it out. So I understand, but as you were talking, I had tears in my eyes because my heart was breaking I can't imagine a 5-year-old being like, it's like ripped from your grandmother's arms and then put into that. And then I completely, and I think a lot of people can relate to the idea of wanting to fit in and then finding out that the mold doesn't fit and then have, so I understand why your journey had to be the way it is. And that's usually, our spiritual journeys or our, human journeys usually do have dark nights of the soul. It usually does have challenges, and I don't subscribe to a universe with a revenge-filled, wrath-filled God. I believe that we are being strengthened and we are being trained, and in what you're hearing, and I feel the pain, but I also understand that it was necessary for you in order to be where you're at today. If I'm not, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but that's.
Oh, you're explaining it beautifully. And yes. To experience that conditioning, to say, you know what, I don't like this conditioning, but how could I make that decision if I always stood outside of it? So to interact, to collaborate with that energy, with substance, is the only way to resolve it.
Yes.
There's a great saying that the only way to resolve the violent karmic cycle is to complete it. We're in a space of completing, of resolution.
Yes. That is profound. The thing that's calling me right now, and I didn't actually think that we were going to talk about this, but if you want to share, because you mentioned the tinctures, the teas, the oils, the whatever, would you just briefly talk about the different products that because you sell these, and I want to say that for those who are listening or watching, I will be in the show notes. I will be including links to your website and to the products and to your Instagram account and all that, so people can go that and find it there. But would you speak just a little bit about the different, because it normally it's not supposed to be quote unquote like a sales program. That's not it, but I just feel called to hear more about the products, and I would like to know more about the products, which is not normally what I do, but would you please?
Yes, thank you for asking. One thing that I do provide is I make essential oils, and I'll make essential oils from a variety of ferns and a variety of other native Hawaiian botanicals. I do it in the traditional way that was taught to me by Tutu, which is the same formula as taught to the ancient Egyptians by Thoth, by the Mayans, Ishel, so by the Hebrews, Metatron. This is the sacred formula of how to create medicine. That's how you keep the life force of a botanical. I would say 95% of what you find on the shelves today in a store, they smell good, they are pleasant, but they have no life force.
Yeah. There's no vibration in them.
There's no vibration, exactly. So the way I do the oils is I do it in the ceremony, in the way of the ceremony. I do it on particular moon phases. So one other thing about Fern Medicine, and just all botanicals, they're ruled by certain phases of the moon. They either go into dormancy or they are invigorated. So getting to know what botanicals coincide with moon phases is very resourceful, because that's when either a botanical needs to be left alone because it's in a state of dormancy, or it's invigorated and it's saying resource me, access. So I've mapped out to the ferns and the botanicals. I've mapped them to their appropriate moon phase. And I can tell you right now that everything I make is invigorated with life force. That is a guarantee. And for my medicinal tinctures, it's the process of fermenting botanicals. Okay, it's I do a nahi or a Hawaiian tree lichen. I do a lacana or Hawaiian lantana, and I do ferns. And those are fermented also in the traditional way as prescribed by Metatron, Pa, Aishel, Bono. And it's the 40 days, 40 nights. Half of those 40 days, 40 nights, it is in open expanse under the sky. And then for the other half, it is submerged in a sacred river, Wailuku River, here on Maui. And, you know, feel free. I'm so grateful that you are offering to share my website and for people to go online and they can read about all the different medicines. Also on the website, I do have something called a fern journal link. And when the ferns have dialogue with me, when the emotions have dialogue with me, I record exactly what they say. I have to translate it because it doesn't come in English. I translate it into English and then record it, my voice, exactly what they're saying. And so that's very resourceful for people to get an idea of what these emotions are trying to express to us, how they're going to navigate us, how they're saying, resource me, this is how I'm opening that gate, and this is how I would love to be perceived, most of all. So we're not in aversion or fear or craving or lack. So yeah, thank you, sister.
Thank you. Keone, we could go on and on, but I think we're complete. Is there?
Yeah, it feels good.
It feels good, right? Is there any last words or like anything that wants to come through, or are we?
Yeah, I would like to just close by saying that Tutu had mentioned to me that the shift is inevitable and becoming really harnessing emotional intelligence is inevitable. No one is immune. And I love to tell this to people who are saying, I'm so immersed in the culture of control. I don't feel there's hope. But this shift and this coming into our maturity, our emotions is inevitable. No one is immune. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of how gracefully it's going to happen for you. And that's the most beautiful advice I can give you is that, guess what? It's happening now. Your nervous system is being recalibrated. How gracefully do you want to go into this shift? So with that, mahalo. Thank you so much, sister.
Thank you, Keone.
That is what we have for you in today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. I hope it served you well. If you are listening to this via podcast, know that you can go to my website, mariaestela.com. That's mariaestela.com for all of the deeds and the details. Finally, I hope you will take a moment to either leave us a comment or review and share it with your friends on social media. God bless.